Good afternoon, everyone. How do I encapsulate 20 years of living with my two beautiful sons, Patrick and Angelo, who both have a diagnosis of autism, in 15 minutes? So here goes. So this is Patrick. Patrick has a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, and he was diagnosed when he was 4 years old, but we weren't told until he was 7 years old, and we found out by accident in a meeting at the school where he was really struggling for 3 years, screaming, kicking, really high levels of anxiety. And then we had a meeting, and that's when we found out that Angelo was diagnosed with autism and Patrick was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Once your children are diagnosed, they're still the same young people, but you have to get your head around the diagnosis of autism. I didn't know anything at all about autism. All I knew was the film Rain Man, and I thought, are they going to grow up to be like the character Dustin Hoffman? But later on down the line, you discover that autism is a spectrum, and all of the individuals who are diagnosed with an autism spectrum condition are so different from each other. Both my boys ended up at home because basically Patrick just couldn't cope within mainstream because he was being bullied. He was coming home saying, "Mummy, what does cuckoo brain mean?" He was very anxious. He was drawing angry pictures. And Angelo was passing all the milestones, walking, talking, and then it was almost like someone came and took everything away from him. He lost his speech, eye contact. He wouldn't let me touch him. He was fixated on patterns on the wallpaper. So here we were, my husband and I, at home with two boys, just getting 5 hours home tuition at home by a teacher that was teaching Patrick, who had some experience of working with Asperger's syndrome, for 5 hours. But the teacher that was working with Angelo had never worked with a child with autism before. And after the first day, she sat on the carpet. I always remember, she started crying. She said, "I don't know what to do." Once the boys were diagnosed, parents of children with autism, they are hungry for information. You're looking everywhere to see, what is it? What is autism? Is it a lifelong disability? What can I do to make things better? When you're given the diagnosis, no one actually sits down with you and says, this is what autism is. When you do research, there's so many different strategies to work with children with autism. It's a minefield. You think, which one do I choose for my sons? So after my sons were at home for 3 years, just getting 5 hours home tuition, and I was reading about how important it is for early intervention for children with autism, we started up a support group. It started up in my home, then we grew to the church hall. I was actually told when my sons were diagnosed, they were the only children in Hillingdon that had autism. It made me feel very isolated. You've probably picked up my accents from the northeast. I was living in London with my husband because he was studying, and I had no family, and I just felt really, really isolated. So I discovered 275 families came out of the woodwork when we started sharing about, is there any other families out there that have children with autism? My husband was going out to work during the day. He'd come in, then I'd go out to work in the evening, and then I'd come home. Both my sons were very poor sleepers, so for 2-3 years, we were just like we're on automatic pilot. So I thought there's got to be a better way of living than this, and this is not helping my sons. So I heard about a school that they were going to knock down and build 37 flats. I climbed over the fence, I looked into the school. It used to be a school for children that had physical disabilities. And to cut a long story short, I approached the local authority. We had to put a feasibility study together, and they said that they would agree to lease us the school as long as we put our names to £627,000 with refurbishment. We had £3,000 in the bank, and I said, okay, yes, we can do it. So when we got the school, I just felt this feeling of elation. I remember it was on my son's birthday on the 5th of January in 1999, and I thought we're going to need some help here. So I wrote to the local newspaper, I went to the probation service, and in the end, we got so much help from community, families that were coming out of the woodwork because their children were at home or in inappropriate provision. So we opened the school with 19 children walking through the door, and my two sons were the last two to be funded 2 weeks before the school opened. The school now has 185 children that travel in from 17 different local authorities. When both my sons got to teenage years, I was thinking where they're going to go, specifically Angelo, because Angelo's got quite severe autism. He's got really difficult sensory difficulties and also epilepsy. So I was looking around, there was nothing at all, so I thought we've got to set up a college. So we set up a vocational college for 45 adults aged between 16 and 53 years old. I've had a crash course in everything you can imagine, but it's the drive and the passion that I've got. I used to be really, really quiet, but since my sons have been diagnosed, I don't know, something inside me, like a fire has been lit, and I just think I've got to support my sons and other children like them. In 2009, lots of parents started writing to me about the difficulties that they were having with diagnosis, trying to find the right type of school, transition. Once their children got to 19, the provision was there's hardly anything out there, almost like they'd been cured. So I set up Anna Kennedy Online, a charity, and what we decided to do was we decided that we were going to try and fight the system and create opportunities for these children and adults. They're not second-class citizens. If you put the right type of support in place, they can really achieve. We put out a diagnosis survey. 2,000 families filled out the diagnosis survey, and on average, parents were waiting 5 years for a diagnosis. That's a long time in a child's life, specifically when they talk about early intervention. So I spoke to Norman Lamb and I asked if it was possible that we could share our survey, and both my colleague and I, we went to the Department of Health and we shared the survey, and they told us that autism gives them the biggest headache out of all disabilities. I met a lady that I find really, really inspirational, Debbie Moore, and she's the founder of Pineapple. And I used to tap dance when I was a kid, and that used to make me come out of my shell. I just really used to like the way it made me feel. And I said I wanted to do something with dance because I think it would be really beneficial for children. And when I started doing some research on this, parents started writing to me about the talents of some of the children that they had. They wrote their own songs, they were teaching themselves how to play the guitar, they were playing instruments, their artwork, and it was just started coming to me, and I thought, I want to put on a show in the centre of London to show what these children and adults can do. So that's when Autisms Got Talent was born. I actually became the Simon Cowell of the autism world. So many people were sending in me their videos, slides, anything that they could send in. So I was looking through them all and I was getting so excited. And then I remember our very first show, 2012. So you can imagine trying to put a show together with 23 acts of all different needs of autism spectrum condition in 2 days. I remember the night before, I was being sick in the toilet. I just thought, are we going to put this show together? But we did, and it was amazing. It made the hairs on the back of my neck come up. People came to the show. It was 650 people. Some people were thinking, oh, we didn't expect to be entertained. And wow, were they entertained. It was the best show ever. We're now in our 5th year, and we're preparing for the show in May. I also take it across the country as a road show. And we've got 23 acts this year, and we've got acts from America, Canada, Croatia, Sweden, and we're so excited about the show. Parents, when they're looking after children with autism, tend to forget about themselves. So I put out a campaign called Take 5. So I decided I wanted to put on a fashion show. We'd never put on a fashion show before, and I thought I want to pamper mums, dads, carers, nanas and granddads, because we really depend on them for respite and so that we're able to go out, you know, with our husbands or whatever. And we put on a fashion show. It was amazing. Again, we had celebrity presenters. We do talks across the country. Only today, I was told about a young man who was bullied, who I know really, really well, and it's really upset me. He's such a wonderful young man. And he's been bullied at school. Yet again, he's moved to schools, and they were actually filming it and putting it on periscopes for everybody to see. It just like, they made my blood boil. I just thought, why would you want to do that to a young man? So what we do as a charity, we go to speak at different schools. I'm actually speaking at a school next week to 500 children. And what we do is we're just raising awareness about autism, talking about how it impacts on these young people. And I actually show the children some of the acts that are performing. So we have a young man, for example, who has no speech whatsoever, severely autistic. He sings beautifully. He stands by the side of the stage. He'll come on. If you say to him, you're going to sing today, if he rehearses in his head, he's sung today, so that means He's going back home. So he's standing by the side of the stage before he performs, and he comes onto the stage, and it's almost like someone puts some sort of a magic wand over him, and he sings beautifully, and then he walks back off the stage, and the tears in the audience. Autism's Got Talent is the best thing for me. I rediscovered fun by doing Strictly, because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I'm always thinking out the box. Like if I'm on the tube going to London, I'm thinking of projects. Just recently I spoke on London Live about a project that I wanted to do for International Women's Day. So I turned it around in 2 weeks. I don't do waiting. It's just like, I have to do it now. I don't like doing meetings about meetings. So with reference to speaking at schools, we're speaking at schools because we want to try and change. Even if we change one child's life from stopping getting bullied, it's worth the effort. What I try to do is just think out the box all of the time. How can I make a difference? Employment. My son has just started an apprenticeship. I'm trying to speak to businesses as well. Give our children and adults an opportunity. Let them, I know it's difficult, for whether you have got a disability or not to try and get work experience and a job. But our children, they've got so much to offer. If you just make some small adjustments. Patrick at the minute is doing an apprenticeship as a mechanic. He's got a fantastic employer. He's really bent over backwards to try and help Patrick. Patrick doesn't get banter in the garage. He finds that really, really difficult. I've got two sons who are very different from each other. I've got a son, and Patrick, he's just so knowledgeable, but he doesn't really get how knowledgeable he is. And he's just so full of information, and he talks for England. It's just like, yak, 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 yak. And it's not that it's a conversation that you have with him. It's constant questioning. It's constant giving me information or something about his interest. It could be a film like Jurassic World. And he'll just talk about it, and he'll know everything that there is to know about it. I remember when he was 21 years old, he wanted to go to New York. And we went to New York. It's difficult for us to go on holiday. We haven't been on holiday as a family for 10 years, so I have to go separately. So I take Angelo to the farm because Angelo finds it really difficult to go on holiday. We go for a long weekend. He can go for long walks, and that really suits him. Where Patrick likes to go sightseeing, so I took him to New York. He was chatting to a native of New York, and they said that he knew more about New York than they did because of the research that he had. So what I'm here today is to ask you all to, if you're speaking to somebody, just if you think they might be on the autistic spectrum or have a diagnosis of Asperger's, sometimes you just need to take that little bit of extra time for them to either process the information. They want to make friends. They want to get married. They want to have a job. They want to, do what everybody else is doing. It's just that they just need that little bit of help. And that's what we're doing. I remember a young man who came to our school. He came to our school and he was told that he'd never amount to anything. His self-esteem was just like rock bottom. He left the school last year in assembly. He gave a speech that the tears were rolling down my eyes, and he walked away with 8 GCSEs, A-star. So it just shows you that if you put the effort in for these children, that they really can achieve. And that's what I'm asking you today. So if you speak to a young person with autism or Asperger's syndrome, just give them that little bit of extra time. Just, they might want to make friends. They find it difficult. They have high levels of anxiety, but just try and just give them the opportunity that they deserve like everybody else. Thank you very much, everybody.